This is a clear violation of the bylaws. Your fence post is 6 inches over the line, and I am ordering you to stop work immediately. That was a message printed in bold red ink on one of the 12 bright orange violation tags, zip-tied to my front door. 12 tags fluttering like aggressive holiday ornaments. Except instead of bringing joy, they brought dread and annoyance. I stood there in my pajamas, hair sticking up like a startled porcupine, staring at the door as if the tags might rearrange themselves into something sensible. Maybe a neighbor prank, maybe a mistake, maybe a misplaced art project from a local kindergarten class. But no, reality hit when I read the name stamped across every page. Karen, our HOA president, the self-crowned queen of Hedges' hatred and high blood pressure. A woman who walked around the community with a clipboard like it was a royal scepter, and everyone else was a peasant waiting to be judged. My mailbox height? Violation. My porch light being too warm? Violation. A tiny chip in the paint on my fence. So small a bird probably sneezed it off? Violation. Each tag was more absurd than the last, and yet each one came with the same towering threat. Fines, demands, deadlines, and Karen's signature in a sharp, pointed stroke that somehow felt personal. But the one that made my stomach drop was the scariest one. Unauthorized encroachment on HOA path. Attached was a little printed photo of the gravel strip, where my yard met the community walkway. A strip that had been there long, before I even bought the place. 12 fines. 12 threats. 12 creative ways Karen was basically saying, "We own you." I took a deep breath, opened the front door, and stepped outside, partially to get air, partially to make sure the entire neighborhood wasn't decorated in violations like some dystopian HOA Christmas display. And there she was, Karen, standing on the path with her clipboard raised like she was posing for a propaganda poster. She had that tight-lipped smile she usually reserved for funerals or when she found a leaf out of place on someone's lawn. "We expect full compliance by Friday," she said, like she was issuing a royal decree. "Or we escalate." Then she pivoted on her orthopedic sandals and clacked away like a smug metronome. That night, I did what any rational human being would do when confronted by a small-town tyrant. I tried to appeal. I started polite. Calm email. Respectful tone. Then I baked cookies, actual cookies, to soften the mood at the board meeting. I even asked a few neighbors to speak on my behalf. But when the meeting started, my neighbors looked down at their shoes like the floor suddenly contained the secrets of the universe. One of them whispered to me without lifting his eyes, "I can't upset her. She notes license plates." That didn't sound like a rumor. That sounded like trauma. The board sat stiff and silent while Karen read my violations one by one, like bedtime stories designed to put compassion to sleep. She didn't even blink. It was almost impressive, if you ignored the hunger for control radiating off her like microwaved rage. Appeal denied. Cookies untouched. Me, furious. When I got home, I paced my kitchen like a caged animal. I felt small, hot inside, like my ribs were a kettle about to whistle. 12 violations. 12. For what? Existing too close to her walkway? Having light bulbs that didn't match her color palette? What was next? Charging me rent for sunlight. That was when my dad's voice popped into my head. Paper beats noise, kid. Always. So I dug for paper. I pulled out the old folder from a house sale. The one I hadn't touched since move-in day. Survey maps. Titled documents. Old HOA's docs. A faded note from the previous owner that mentioned some easement confusion years ago. At midnight, I taped the survey map to my wall and traced the lines with a flashlight like I was some kind of conspiracy theorist. The path ran right along my yard. That part checked out. But then I saw something that made me stop, breathing for a second. The survey showed the actual property line. And the path? It wasn't where Karen said it was. In fact, the edge of the walkway dipped into my property, 2 full feet, for about 30 feet of distance. My eyes went wide. The HOA path wasn't fully on HOA land. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, that line from the survey flashed behind my eyelids like a neon sign from fate. Morning broke, sunlight creeping across the map like a slow reveal, and a plan formed in my mind, a plan that was legal, clean, quiet, and deliciously Karen-proof. First, I called the county recorder. I asked about the easement. I asked about the path. I asked whether the walkway had ever been officially granted access through my property. And the answer? Turns out, the segment near my house had only a verbal use agreement from years ago when the developer cut corners. No recorded easement. No written agreement. No legal right. Just habit, assumption, and Karen's loud sandals. So, at 10 a.m., I filed the necessary paperwork. At noon, I recorded a boundary affidavit. By 2 p.m., I submitted a permit for a low garden fence placed exactly along my surveyed property line, my real property line. Then I hired a surveyor to come mark the boundary with little neon flags. People stared. Neighbors whispered. Karen hovered with her phone out, documenting everything like she was filming a nature documentary titled Homeowner Attempt Rebellion. I smiled like a villain in an 80s teen movie and offered her lemonade. She refused like it was poison. When the fence posts arrived the next morning, I set them in clean concrete, post by post, right along the flags, never crossing onto the path, just hugging the exact legal line. And with those 2 feet reclaimed, the walkway became too narrow for golf carts. Karen's golf cart was her crown jewel, her chariot, her parade float, her mobile throne. And just like that, with a few wooden posts and some concrete, she couldn't drive it past my house anymore. I hung a simple sign on my side. Private property respect the boundary compliant with county records. I used her favorite word, compliant. Karen exploded. She marched up to me with a fresh stack of violation tickets, waving them like angry pom-poms. "You're obstructing HOA property," she shouted. "Remove this now." I kept my voice dry and calm, like I was asking for ketchup at a diner. "Show me the recorded easement giving the HOA the right to use my land," I said, "and I'll consider it." Phones popped up around us. Neighbors filming. Even people who pretended not to know me suddenly cared. The air crackled like static. And then, of course, Karen called the police. Nothing says, "I'm right," quite like dialing 911 over fence. 2 officers rolled up, calm and polite. Karen performed her usual opera of indignation. I presented my survey, my county documents, my permit. The older officer read through everything quietly, then looked at Karen. "Do you have an easement document?" he asked. Karen blinked. Twice. Fast. "We have rules," she said. "And precedent." "Rules aren't deeds," the officer replied. He turned to me and nodded. "You're within your rights." Karen's face looked like it could boil water. She switched tactics immediately, calling the HOA inspector, like a general summoning reinforcements. The inspector showed up with a metal clipboard and a pen gripped like a sword. He walked the line, examined the flags, checked the permit inside. A deep, exhausted sigh of a man who's seen too much HOA drama in his lifetime. "Mrs. Ford," he said carefully to Karen, "this path appears to extend into his property. Without a recorded easement, the HOA cannot enforce use of this area. These violations won't stand." A ripple of giggles moved through the small crowd. Someone whispered, "Get her paperwork." Karen's jaw worked like she was chewing invisible gravel, and she was far from finished. Karen, refusing to surrender even when cornered by paperwork, facts, witnesses, and the full weight of county law, went for her most dramatic move yet. She called an emergency HOA board meeting. Right there, in the middle of the cul-de-sac. People dragged chairs out like it was an impromptu neighborhood theater show. Phones charged. Popcorn bags materialized. Someone even opened a lawn chair and said, "Finally, something fun around here." Karen stood at the center with her clipboard, righteous fury sizzling off her like static. She launched into reading my 12 violations once more, only this time with extra seasoning, as if louder, angrier storytelling might somehow rewrite county records. She added dramatic pauses, raised eyebrows, hand motions. She was performing. She must have practiced in the mirror. "Violation number 1, she proclaimed. "Mailbox height discrepancy." A neighbor whispered, "Is she serious?" "Violation number 2, porch light hue noncompliant." Someone snorted. Karen shot them a death glare. "And violation number 3. That was when I stepped forward. I held up the survey. Calm, slow, deliberate, like a magician about to reveal the final card. I didn't say much. Words weren't my weapon tonight. Paper was. Then I pulled out the little portable speaker I had tucked under my arm. I set it on the hood of my car. Everyone leaned in, and I hit play. The audio recording of my call with the county public info office filled the cul-de-sac. There is no recorded easement for the walkway beside that parcel. Silence swept the crowd. Someone dropped their drink. The effect was incredible. Heads turned, brows raised, eyes slid away from Karen. The power dynamic flipped in real time, like a seesaw bouncing the queen off her throne. One neighbor, who had avoided eye contact with me for years out of pure HOA-induced fear, raised his hand timidly. "So, we've been walking on his land?" Another neighbor chuckled nervously. "Karen, did you know this?" Karen's face twisted. "This is about community standards," she hissed, like the words themselves were wrestling each other inside her mouth. I kept it simple, factual, impossible to argue with. "Standards are fine," I said, "but you fine me for your mistake." The HOA inspector cleared his throat, a sound that echoed like a verdict. "I will be rescinding these violations," he declared, speaking loudly enough for every phone camera capturing the moment. "And Mrs. Ford, your golf cart should not use this narrow section anymore. It's unsafe and outside HOA rights." The crowd reacted instantly. Phones lifted higher. Someone whispered, "Oh, this is going on a Facebook group." Another kid yelled, "Karen got cart blocked." And just like that, laughter swept the cul-de-sac like a wave. Karen stood stiffly, her entire posture trembling with the effort not to explode. She snapped her clipboard shut with a crack that echoed, and then she stormed off toward her house, her golf cart sitting in her driveway like a dethroned relic. She didn't ride it for days after that. A week later, a letter slid into everyone's mailboxes. Not one of Karen's colorful passive-aggressive sheets, but an official HOA board letter. The path would be rerouted around the true property line. The 12 violations were officially withdrawn, and Karen was relieved of her duties pending review, which was a polite way of saying she was benched indefinitely. Her golf cart sat unused, like a sad orange pumpkin on wheels. This time, the neighbors didn't pretend not to know me. They waved when passing the new construction site. One even brought over the cookies I'd baked weeks ago, still in a container, untouched. "Sorry we didn't speak up earlier," he said, rubbing his neck. "Didn't want to get on her list." I nodded. I understood. Living under HOAs with leaders like Karen felt like living under soft dictatorship. People learned to stay quiet, to blend in, to obey tiny rules designed to keep one person feeling powerful. But now, things felt different. The new path crews came by, digging and measuring and doing the jobs the original developer should have done correctly years ago. Lavender bushes lined a fresh fence on my side, the ones I planted the day after the board meeting. Lavender that hummed with bees and peace and the satisfaction of knowing Karen couldn't touch a single petal. Evenings became quiet again. No more footsteps of Karen stalking the walkways. No more cameras or clipboards or sudden ambush inspections. No more waking up to threats zip-tied to my door like hostile presence. Neighbors began walking past with lightness in their steps. They smiled, laughed, chatted. Some avoided looking at Karen's house entirely, because she still took the long way around the neighborhood, chin raised, eyes forward, pretending the world had not shrunk for her. People kept asking me, "Do you feel bad?" Not even a little, because I didn't yell. I didn't cheat. I didn't break anything or threaten anyone. I did exactly what she always claimed to care about. I followed the rules, the real ones, the legal ones, not the ones she invented on her clipboard throne. Karen taught me her game, weaponizing rules to intimidate. I just learned to play by the book. The difference is, my book actually existed. And every time I sit on my porch at sunset, the sky glowing orange behind that neat little fence, I think about the first morning when 12 violation tags dangled on my door like threats. She wanted to own me with paper. She wanted me scared, small, obedient. But instead, I owned the path, with facts, with quiet persistence, with the truth she never bothered to look for. So now, when neighbors pass and whisper, she finally got what she deserved. I just smile at the lavender, listening to the bees hum like a victory chorus. And I think to myself, paper beats noise. Always. Do you want more HOA stories like this? Because I've got plenty.